Hi everyone, I'm Matthew Moniz, and this is the iPhone 7 Plus, and this is the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, two of the hottest smartphones of 2016 so far. Now, a lot of you are probably looking at these two phones as an upgrade or possibly buying them as their next smartphone. I really hope this video does a good job at comparing the phones so that you guys can make a better purchase decision. So, is the iPhone 7 Plus the better phone, or is it the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge? Alright, so let's start this off by talking about the design. I'm going to talk about the iPhone 7 Plus first, as it's had the same design for the past 3 years. Don't get me wrong, this was a beautiful phone 3 years ago, but in its third year, it's starting to get stale, especially when all the Android manufacturers like Samsung are being very creative with their design. Now, I know the S7 Edge has had the same design for the past 2 years, but the biggest difference between both companies is that Samsung is still refining that design every single year. So for example, with the S6 Edge Plus, it was big, it was hard to hold, and palm rejection was terrible. But now with the S7 Edge, it's a lot easier to hold, the edges are smoother, and typing is a little bit easier as well. Also, the fact that both phones have a 5.5-inch screen, but the S7 Edge is a lot easier to hold in the hand because the bezels are a lot smaller. Now, I know the OLED display has a lot to do with it, as it can be bent and shaped a lot easier than an IPS panel, but I think Apple could have done a little bit of a design change in order to make the bezels a little bit smaller. The next thing worth mentioning about the design is that both phones are now water resistant. They can both be submerged up to 1 meter inside of water before having a malfunction. Now, I don't suggest bringing this in the pool or swimming with it. You're most likely going to break your phone, but if you drop your phone in the puddle or if you're out in the rain, you don't have to worry about your phone breaking down on you. Now, there is some disadvantages to being water resistant, and this is more for the Galaxy S7 Edge, as it only has one speaker. Because there is a waterproof coating on that speaker, the sound coming out of it is very tingy and doesn't sound that great. Now, the iPhone 7 Plus still has the bottom facing speaker as well, but what they've done is that they've added another speaker inside of the earpiece. Now, the sound is significantly better on the iPhone 7 Plus than it is on the S7 Edge, but it's obviously not as good as having two front-facing speakers like on the ZT Axon 7 or Nexus 6P. So having two external speakers is always great on a smartphone. The sound quality is always greatly improved, but what's not improved is the fact that Apple took away the headphone jack. Now, if you're someone who has a lot of headphones, you're gonna have to carry a dongle with you or buy yourself a wireless pair of headphones. The good news is that the S7 Edge still has its audio jack, so you can continue life as it always has been. Now, here's the thing about my experience with having no headphone jack. I've actually been carrying around a Moto Z Play and an iPhone 7 Plus, and I haven't used a dongle yet, and that's only because I carry wireless headphones on me at all times. Now, for those audiophiles out there, this is not a great solution at all, because we know Bluetooth quality is significantly worse than having a good pair of wired headphones. So that's something to keep in mind when you're deciding between both phones. Alright, to sum up the design round, I'm gonna give this round to the Galaxy S7 Edge. Samsung has gone a long way to be more intuitive with their design, to create a phone that's a lot easier to hold, that's very attractive, and they've decided to keep the headphone jack at least for 1 more year. Don't get me wrong, the iPhone 7 Plus is still a very beautiful phone, but I think they got rid of the headphone jack a little bit too early, and I would have loved to see thinner bezels on such a big device. So next up is the display, and the iPhone 7 Plus's display is still 1080p, which is fine unless you use your phone for VR. But quite honestly, it's still a fantastic display. In fact, it's broken a lot of records according to DisplayMate. It has the most color accuracy out of any display they've tested, the highest absolute luminance, and the highest contrast ratio for any IPS LCD on a smartphone. If you're looking for the most color accurate smartphone display on the market, go for the iPhone 7. But if you want a QHD screen, which is better for VR, but images that are oversaturated but pop with color and higher brightness, the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge does a better job. Also, with an OLED display, you get true blacks, a more efficient panel, the option to have an always-on display, and since OLED panels are thinner, it can be bent, which leads into products having thinner bezels. So here's the thing, both of these smartphone displays are absolutely beautiful. If you're all about accurate colors, then you're gonna wanna lean more towards the iPhone 7 Plus. A lot to be said about AMOLED panels in general. They have that contrasty look, they're very bright, brighter than any IPS display, and they do a great job of bringing images to life. I personally prefer the very vibrant display on the S7 Edge. Now, I'm gonna give this round a tie because it really comes down to personal preference. So moving on to performance, and both of these phones are ridiculously fast. The iPhone 7 Plus is using the latest A10 Fusion chip, which does a fantastic job, and it's probably the fastest chip on the market today. And my S7 Edge, which is the worldwide version, is using the Exynos 8890. Now the iPhone 7 Plus has the software and hardware optimized to work closely together, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge doesn't have its software truly optimized for its hardware experience. Now, in terms of day-to-day basis, anyone who uses both of these phones will find them both to be a fluid experience. But for someone who's been using both over the course of the last little while, the overall experience is better on iOS. It's a lot more snappy, it's a lot more fluid, whereas with the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, every once in a while I had to go in and clear all the applications in the background. So this brings me on to the software experience for both phones. Now I can't really tell you which one's better, iOS or Android. They're both very different platforms, but I can say this, I personally prefer the operating system of Android. I think it makes more sense. The notification system is a lot more intuitive and a lot more detailed. I also like the fact that you can do a lot more customizing on your Android phone than you can on iOS. But I do love the fact that iOS is really fast due to the hardware and software optimization like I mentioned earlier. And I also love the fact that the app experience is still more polished on iOS. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to find those apps on Android. You can find the exact same apps, but you can tell that developers put a lot more effort and time into the applications on the iPhone than they do on Android. Now, before I talk about the camera, I just want to talk about battery life quickly. Both phones have great battery life. I was averaging about 3.5 hours on the S7 Edge, and I'm a very heavy user. So I go to the gym in the morning where there's no reception, so it's constantly searching for a signal, draining the battery. I listen to podcasts, I watch YouTube videos, I text, I email, and I play the odd game. Same holds true for the iPhone 7 Plus, but with the iPhone 7 Plus, I was getting significantly better battery life. If I could see a screen on time with it, I was probably averaging 4 to 5 hours as opposed to 3.5 like on the S7 Edge. Now the good thing about the S7 Edge is you have that wireless charging and you also have that fast charging, so if midday you need to top up quickly, you can do that with the Samsung phone, but you can't with the iPhone 7 Plus. And finally, let's talk about the camera. Both of these phones have fantastic cameras, so you can't go wrong with either one. But the S7 Edge has an aperture of f1.7 and a 12 megapixel sensor, whereas the iPhone 7 Plus also has a 12 megapixel sensor, but has an aperture of f1.8. So what this basically means is you should get better low light photos on the S7 Edge. But the iPhone 7 Plus also comes with a second camera on the back, allowing you to zoom in up to 2 times so you can get closer to the subject. Now this is beneficial because you don't have to use a digital zoom, which often adds a lot of noise to the photo. With the camera experience on the S7 Edge, you also get manual control, so you can configure the ISO, the white balance to help you set up that shot before taking a picture, where you can't do that with the iPhone 7 Plus unless you download third-party software. So which one actually takes better photos? Well, I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures and video, and you guys are going to let me know in the comments below, and I'll give you guys my opinion after I show you them. So what do you guys think of the camera quality on both phones? I want to hear what you guys have to say on the comments below. But I personally prefer the S7 Edge. I found the photos to be a lot more warm and vibrant, and I also found it to do a little bit better under low light, but it did over sharpen and over process images compared to the iPhone. Whereas the iPhone, I found the pictures to be a little bit more natural, but slightly underexposed. But the bottom line is, as you can see, no matter which phone you choose, they both do a fantastic job at taking photos. All right, so this comes to the end of my comparison between the iPhone 7 Plus and S7 Edge. Now here's the thing, I don't think one phone is better than the other, because I'm constantly switching between Android and iOS on a daily basis because I love both platforms and I review them all the time. But what I can say to you, the consumer who's considering one of these phones, is that with the iPhone, I find it to be a much more polished, smoother user experience. So there's no lag, the app ecosystem is a lot more rich, and the apps itself are a lot more polished. But with Android, I find the experience to be a lot more personal. You can do a lot of customization with it. You can make the phone exactly how you want it to look like. The notifications, for example, are a lot more rich. There's a lot more detail, and there's a lot more information you can get from them than you could, let's say, on iOS. At the end of the day, these are both fantastic smartphones, and it really comes down to whether you like Android or iOS. And that's something you're gonna have to decide for yourself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this comparison between the iPhone 7 Plus and S7 Edge. I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. Which one do you prefer and why? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. And as always, I will see you in the next video.